Marcus Rain lifted his champagne glass the way he lifted everything now, like it belonged to him simply because he wanted it. Manhattan's rooftop restaurant at Le Meridien hummed with satisfied voices, the sound of people who'd never been told no. Beside him, his mistress, Sujin Park, laughed too loudly, making sure the next table heard. Marcus liked it that way. He liked being watched. He didn't know Destiny was already climbing the stairs behind him. The maitre d' straightened first. Then the sommelier paused mid-pour. Then, one by one, heads turned toward the entrance, and the low music of clinking glasses fell into an uneasy hush. Marcus followed the silence with mild irritation, the look of a man annoyed that something dared interrupt his evening. Then his stomach dropped. Rochelle Davis stood at the entrance. The woman he had erased. The wife he told his new circle didn't exist anymore. Not really. Not in any way that mattered. Her wine-colored dress skimmed the curve of a 6-month pregnancy. His child, the one he'd told her to handle quietly. But it wasn't her stomach that stopped his heart. It was the man beside her. Ji-hoon Kong. White hair swept back like frost over granite. A face that had graced exactly 0 magazine covers because he made sure of it. The most feared name in Seoul, New York capital. A man who didn't raise his voice because he never needed to. His hand rested at the small of Rochelle's back. Steady, certain, protective. Marcus's glass slipped from his fingers and shattered against the marble floor. 8 months earlier, Rochelle Davis had been nobody special, and she liked it that way. A junior compliance analyst at a mid-sized firm in the financial district. She came home every night to a cramped one-bedroom in Bed-Stuy that she and Marcus were slowly, lovingly furnishing with second-hand finds. She wasn't glamorous. She wasn't the kind of woman New York's elite photographed by accident. She was steady, and she loved a man who, back then, was still hungry enough to deserve it. Marcus had been nothing then. A fintech founder burning through his last round of angel funding, sleeping 4 hours a night, terrified of failure in a way he'd never admit out loud. Rochelle worked overtime, so rent got paid. She learned to stretch a paycheck into 2 weeks of groceries. She believed in him on the nights he stopped believing in himself. Then Marcus's app went viral after one lucky term sheet with a Seoul-based venture fund, and something in him detonated, not into joy, but into hunger. New suits, new vocabulary, new hours that stretched later and later, laced with a cologne Rochelle had never bought him. Then came Sujin Park, hired to modernize his brand. Rochelle told herself she was imagining things. She told herself marriage meant something. She was 11 weeks pregnant, the ultrasound photo tucked carefully in her coat pocket, waiting up for him with a nervousness that felt like hope. When Marcus walked in past midnight, with Sujin's lipstick smudged against his collar and no shame anywhere on his face. "Don't make this dramatic," he'd said, waving a hand like he was swatting a fly. "Sujin and I are together now. We're married," Rochelle whispered. "For now," he corrected, voice gone cold as steel. "Come on, Rochelle. You knew this was coming. You're sweet. You're just not built for where I'm going." "I'm pregnant," she said, and something in her chest cracked wide open when his expression didn't change at all. "Then you'll handle it," he said. "I can't have a kid dragging down my image right now." By morning, her belongings were in boxes on the curb. Her access to their joint account was frozen. Her number was blocked from his new phone. She was left with nothing but a heartbeat that wasn't hers alone anymore. Months later, she was still there, in what barely passed for an apartment in Bushwick. 4 walls. A radiator that screamed louder than her own thoughts at 3 a.m. Temporary, she told herself. Temporary had a cruel way of becoming permanent. She woke before dawn most mornings, not by choice, but because her body had become a battlefield. Nausea that doubled her over the bathroom sink, legs trembling as she gripped the counter and whispered, one day at a time, to no one. Her job in retail compliance wasn't glamorous, but it kept the lights on, barely. She wrapped her coat tighter on the walk to the subway, not against the cold, but against the stairs, the ones that lingered on her stomach a beat too long, the ones that made her feel like evidence in a story she never agreed to star in. Because Marcus's people had gone to work fast. Whisper campaigns dressed as concern. She trapped him. She wanted the money. She got pregnant on purpose. None of it true. All of it spreading. Former co-workers who used to wave at her in the elevator now looked past her like she was smoke. Some afternoons, she excused herself to the bathroom at work, pretending she needed 5 minutes. Really, she just needed somewhere no one could hear her cry. But she didn't only cry. One morning, her supervisor called her into a side office, voice clipped. "HR flagged your file. Someone reported irregular hours during your last review period. Rochelle knew exactly who'd made that call, a coworker who'd been feeding Marcus's whisper campaign for weeks. She didn't panic. She pulled up her own timesheets, cross-referenced them against the building's badge swipe logs, and laid both on the desk. I was here every one of those hours, she said, steady. Check the swipes yourself. Her supervisor did. The complaint dissolved on the spot. Rochelle walked out of that office with her job intact, and something she hadn't felt in weeks, the quiet proof that she could still fight her own battles, even flat broke and alone. It wasn't enough to save her apartment, but it was enough to remind her she hadn't forgotten how. At night, on the mattress that was her only furniture besides a second-hand dresser, she pressed both hands to her belly and whispered apologies to a heartbeat that hadn't asked for any of this. I'm trying, she'd say. I promise I'm trying. Promises didn't keep the lights on. One night, climbing 4 flights with her legs aching under the weight she carried, she found a yellow notice taped to her door. Final warning. Eviction pending. She'd been choosing between prenatal vitamins and the gas bill for weeks. This was the moment the dam broke. She sank to the floor, eviction notice still in hand, and then her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Something told her to answer. Miss Davis, said a voice, calm and unhurried in a way that didn't match the chaos of her night. My name is Ji-hoon Kong. I believe you need help. She froze. She had never met him, never spoken to him. But the name was impossible to mistake. Wall Street's ghost. The Mansoul's boardrooms went quiet for. I'm outside your building, he said. Please open the door. For a long moment, she didn't move, eviction notice trembling in her free hand, phone pressed weakly to her ear. Outside her window, the ordinary noise of Bushwick traffic continued as if the world hadn't just tilted on its axis. Miss Davis, he said again, low composed. This is Ji-hoon Kong. I'd like to speak with you. I think you have the wrong number, she managed. No, he said gently. I'm exactly where I intend to be. A chill traced her spine. How do you even know who I am? A pause, brief, deliberate. Because I saw what happened to you, and I don't ignore injustice. Her fingers fumbled with both locks on her door. When she finally pulled it open, December air swept in ahead of him. A tall figure in a charcoal coat, white hair dusted faintly with snow, eyes sharp but unexpectedly warm. Ji-hoon Kong, standing on her doorstep like he belonged there. He looked past her, into the cramped apartment, the flickering light, the stack of unopened bills, the single mattress on the floor, and something moved behind his composed expression. Not pity, not disgust. A quiet, contained anger that wasn't aimed at her. May I come in? He asked softly. She stepped aside, mortified. Sorry, I wasn't expecting company. You've been through enough, he said, removing his gloves. I didn't come here to judge you. Why are you here? Her voice cracked. No one even calls me anymore. His gaze softened, but didn't waver. Because you deserve better than what was done to you. You don't even know the story, she said. I know enough, he said. I know Marcus Rain. And I know exactly what men like him do to women who might one day threaten the image he's built. Her chest constricted at his name. So this is revenge for you? You're using me as leverage. Something flickered across Ji-hoon's face, there and gone. If I wanted revenge, he said carefully, I've had 1,000 chances before now. I'm here because I saw a woman fighting alone who never should have had to. Her eyes burned. She hated crying in front of strangers, but something about his stillness, steady, unhurried, entirely unbothered by her broken apartment, loosened something she'd been holding shut for months. I'm not strong, she whispered. Yes, he said, without a second's hesitation. You are. You just forgot. He extended a simple business card between 2 fingers. If you'll trust me, I can help you rebuild everything he tried to take. Rochelle stared at it. Her life had already collapsed once because she trusted the wrong man. Could she survive trusting another? Her fingers hovered over the card, and as she finally closed her hand around it, Ji-hoon's expression shifted, quiet, knowing, as if he understood this single decision would change the rest of her life. The Park Avenue Tower scraped a gray winter sky, and Rochelle stood outside its revolving doors the next morning feeling every inch the wrong species among the wool coats and leather briefcases gliding past her. Inside, marble floors gleamed. Security nodded politely, and on a screen above the elevators, financial news scrolled in bold, mocking letters. Marcus Rain, founder of Rain Fintech, prepares to announce new expansion deal. Beside his photo, a smaller one, Sujin Park, captioned, Brand Director Sparks New Vision. Rochelle's throat tightened. She blinked hard, willing the tears back. Miss Davis. She turned. Ji-hoon stood there, immaculate in a dark suit, his eyes softening at the sight of her shaken expression. You came, he said quietly. I almost turned around. I'm glad you didn't. He led her into a private elevator. As the doors slid shut, the noise of the city fell away, leaving only the low hum of the rising car. I know this must feel overwhelming, Ji-hoon said. But I asked you here because you have something valuable. She shook her head. I have nothing. You're wrong. His eyes held hers, steady. You have the truth. And the truth is the one thing men like Marcus can't control. Her breath caught. And I need someone with the truth, he added. Someone willing to fight. Fight. The word felt foreign in her mouth. Dangerous. And for the first time in months, strangely powerful. I've already had my legal team draft your consulting agreement, Ji-hoon said, sliding a folder across the desk. And I've arranged an OBGYN for you at Lenox Hill, the best in the city. You'll see him Thursday. Rochelle blinked. You scheduled my doctor's appointment? You needed one. I handled it. You didn't ask me, she said quietly. You just decided. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, then the smallest recalibration. I meant it as help. I know, she said, but I've had someone else decide things for me before. It didn't end well. He was quiet for a moment. Noted, he said finally, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked like a man reconsidering himself rather than issuing an order. When the elevator doors opened onto a panoramic office suite overlooking Manhattan, Rochelle stepped out and felt something she thought she'd buried in Bushwick along with her old life. Possibility. But possibility, she would soon learn, came with a cost neither of them had spoken aloud yet, because 3 floors below, in a boardroom she hadn't seen, a name from Ji-hoon Kang's past was already being whispered. A name that would tie him to Marcus in a way far more dangerous than revenge. And across the ocean, in a household that still bowed to tradition older than either of their fortunes, Ji-hoon's family was about to learn the name Rochelle Davis for the very first time. Rochelle had never stood inside a room like the one Ji-hoon led her into that afternoon. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed Manhattan like a living painting, the Hudson catching the pale winter light. A long mahogany table stretched before her, surrounded by executives in tailored suits who all turned toward her at once. Their expressions were unreadable, curiosity tangled with calculation. She pulled her coat tighter over her growing belly. Ji-hoon, one man said. Is this the consultant you mentioned? Consultant. Rochelle almost turned and walked out. But Ji-hoon stepped beside her, steady as ever. Yes, he said simply. This is Rochelle Davis. She's not a Wall Street insider. She's not a corporate shark. But I trust her analysis and her perspective. The room stilled. Rochelle kept her eyes down until his hand brushed her elbow. Have a seat, he said quietly. She obeyed, palms damp, heart hammering. Screens lit up. Spreadsheets loaded. Voices rose and fell around numbers she didn't fully understand, until Ji-hoon pulled up a set of financial charts they'd reviewed together the night before. Irregularities buried inside Marcus's fintech infrastructure contracts. Unreported transfers. Numbers that didn't add up. Her stomach turned. She recognized them. Her own name was attached to several of those filings. Documents Marcus had once slid across their kitchen table and told her not to worry about. Miss Davis, an executive asked, do these patterns look familiar to you? Ji-hoon's eyes flicked to her, calm, reassuring. You don't have to say anything you're not comfortable with. But Rochelle lifted her chin. Yes, she said, voice trembling but clear. I've seen these numbers before. She explained it slowly at first, then with growing certainty. The pressure, the paperwork he'd waved off as routine, the way he always said, leave the business to me, Rochelle. You wouldn't understand it anyway. Her cheeks burned, not with shame this time, but anger. You realize, one executive said carefully, what you're describing could expose a major corporate fraud. I'm not trying to expose anything, she said. I'm just telling the truth. Sometimes, Ji-hoon said quietly, truth is exposure. By the time she finished, the room had gone very still. Ji-hoon spoke into the silence, measured and absolute. From this point forward, Rochelle's insight becomes central to our strategy. Anyone who underestimates her will find themselves at a disadvantage. You're giving her a seat at the table? Someone asked. Yes, Ji-hoon said. Starting now. For the first time since Marcus shattered her life, Rochelle realized she wasn't fighting alone anymore. 2 days later, word had already begun slipping through Cole Tower's glass hallways. Not an official announcement, just the particular kind of secret that spreads faster in a building full of ambitious people. Is that her? The one Rain left pregnant? I heard she found something the SEC would want. Every elevator ride became an act of quiet courage. But for the first time in months, not a single glance held pity. That afternoon, Ji-hoon invited her to an investor's lunch at a private club so old and exclusive that its members rarely spoke its name aloud. I can't go there, Rochelle whispered. Those people are in magazines. On boards. I'm just. You're Rochelle, Ji-hoon said. That's enough. I don't have anything to wear. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. That's an easy fix. Within the hour, his assistant appeared with 2 garment bags and a pair of low, elegant heels, chosen, clearly, for a woman carrying a child, not for a red carpet. I can't accept this, Rochelle said, voice cracking. You're not accepting a favor, Ji-hoon said gently. You're accepting a seat at the table. The club looked like old money carved into stone, gold sconces, oil portraits, deals worth billions whispered over crystal. When Rochelle walked in beside Ji-hoon, a ripple moved through the room. Not because he'd brought a woman, because of who he'd brought. A silver-haired man at the head of the room rose to greet them. Ji-hoon, we didn't expect you. I know, Ji-hoon said. This is Rochelle Davis. She's consulting with us. The man's gaze flicked briefly to her belly, then back to her face, assessing, not unkind. I hear you caught something our analysts missed. I don't know if that's true, Rochelle said. It is, Ji-hoon said firm. Questions came, sharp, thoughtful ones. Rochelle's voice shook at first, then steadied as her analytical mind, sharper than she'd ever given herself credit for, took over. She laid out the falsified numbers, the funneled accounts, the pattern only someone once inside Marcus's life could have recognized. When she finished, the silver-haired man let out a low whistle. Miss Davis, you may have uncovered the start of the biggest corporate scandal this city has seen in years. Ji-hoon leaned close, voice low enough only she could hear. This is why I needed you here. Does Marcus know yet? She whispered. No, Ji-hoon said. But when he does, everything he built will start to crack. For the first time since her life fell apart, Rochelle understood something new about herself. She was no longer the hunted. She was becoming the danger. Marcus Rain had always believed he was untouchable. For 48 hours that belief had been quietly, methodically dismantled. Calls went unanswered. Emails turned curt. Board members exchanged looks he wasn't meant to see. His CFO stormed into his office without knocking. We have a problem. Kong Capital is buying positions in 2 of our partner companies. Quietly. Strategically. So, Marcus said. So, Ji-hoon Kong doesn't move unless he's preparing to take someone down. Marcus's jaw tightened. This is Rochelle. What did she tell him? What lies is she feeding him? I don't think they're lies, his CFO said carefully. She signed off on those documents. She was my wife. I told her what to sign. That won't matter legally, his CFO said. Marcus, if she talks to the SEC, you're done. That night, in a penthouse that had begun to feel more like a cage than a sanctuary, Marcus called Soo-jin again and again. When she finally picked up, her tone was clipped. Why is Kong going after me? He demanded. What did you start? You're the one who left your pregnant wife with nothing, Soo-jin said coldly. Did you think she'd just disappear? Someone is using her. Maybe, Soo-jin said. You should have respected her instead of humiliating her. A pause, dangerous, telling. I'm with whoever wins, she finally said, and hung up. His mistress was slipping. His company was slipping. And the woman he'd once dismissed as harmless was rising like smoke he couldn't put out. Ji-hoon showed up at Rochelle's apartment that evening with an expression she hadn't seen on him before. Something caught between protectiveness and barely contained fury. Are you okay? He asked the moment she opened the door. Yes. I think so. You're not, he said. Something came up today. Something you need to know before anyone else tells you. Her stomach tightened. He stepped inside, closing the door gently behind him, and set a single folder on her small kitchen table. Sit, he said. She obeyed, knees weak. Rochelle, he said, voice steady but dark. We found something new in the documents you signed for Marcus. Something he hid from you. Something that could have ruined your life. Her breath caught. I know he tricked me. You didn't know the scale. Ji-hoon opened the folder slowly. Those signatures weren't for routine expenses. They approved transfers into private accounts under shell identities. Marcus laundered money through fake development deals. Legally, your signature shows you approved every transfer. The room tilted. I could have gone to prison. Yes, Ji-hoon said. And Marcus knew that. He counted on it. Something in her chest split open. Not fear this time, but betrayal so deep it felt physical. How could he put me in that kind of danger? Because men like Marcus only love themselves, Ji-hoon said quietly, crouching beside her chair. There's more, he added. He kept copies of those documents. Not destroyed, as if he planned to use them against you later. Leverage, in case you ever threatened his image. For a long moment Rochelle couldn't speak. Then, like a dam breaking, her fear twisted into something else entirely. Anger, pure and righteous. He wanted a way to destroy me if I ever fought back, she whispered. But he failed, Ji-hoon said. Because you're not alone anymore. And now we control the truth. Not him. She wiped her tears, hands suddenly steady. What do we do now? Now, Ji-hoon said. We show the board what Marcus tried to hide. The next morning, Ji-hoon led her not to another meeting, but to his private office on the top floor, quiet, insulated, walls of glass holding back the gray city sky. There's something else we need to discuss, he said. It's bigger than the documents. Rochelle sank into the leather chair, bracing herself. What is it? I didn't meet you by accident, Ji-hoon said. Her blood went cold. What do you mean? Marcus and I weren't just competitors, he said. 5 years ago, we were partners on a development fund. I trusted him. He falsified records, rerouted capital, and let it destroy a deal that cost my firm millions, then framed a junior analyst on my team to cover it. A good man who never worked in finance again. Rochelle's chest tightened. So you wanted revenge? No, Ji-hoon said. I wanted accountability. But he vanished behind lawyers and NDAs. I couldn't touch him. Not without someone who knew how he operated. Someone he underestimated. You mean me? She said. Not a question. A realization. You were the only person he ever let close enough to see the truth without realizing it. Her throat tightened. So you used me? At first, Ji-hoon said, and the honesty cost him visibly. Yes. He knelt beside her chair, forcing her to meet his eyes. In the beginning, I saw you as leverage. But then I saw who you actually are. A woman Marcus tried to shatter, and failed. A woman who deserved justice long before I arrived. Why tell me now? Because you deserve the truth before we take the next step, he said. And because I care about you. Not as a strategy. As a person. Her voice cracked. So you used me. Just like he did. Rochelle, I'm trying to undo the damage he caused. His jaw tightened. I'm trying to make things right. You should have told me. I know, he said quietly. The silence between them held two people caught between hurt and loyalty. Finally, her voice broke the stillness. What do we do now? Ji-hoon stood, shoulders straightening. Now we bring Marcus down completely. This time, together, with nothing left hidden. But there was something Ji-hoon still hadn't told her. Something he was dreading more than the confession he'd just made. His mother had called that morning, her voice sharp with the particular disapproval reserved for family matters. Word of an American woman, pregnant, unmarried, no family name anyone recognized, had already reached Seoul. Ji-hoon, she had said, in the tone that had ended his father's business deals for 30 years. You will end this before it becomes an embarrassment to this family. He hadn't answered her yet. He wasn't sure how. The Rain FinTech boardroom no longer felt like Marcus's kingdom. Security didn't greet him. Assistants didn't rush to his side. Every screen in the building flickered with the same headline. SEC reviewing Rain FinTech ledger. Possible corporate fraud. The SEC has probable cause, the chairman said flatly. Based on what? Marcus snapped. Based on the anomalies tied to your ex-wife's signature. She's my ex-wife, Marcus growled. Exactly, the chairman said. Which makes her testimony more credible, not less. Marcus's stomach dropped. Testimony. She'd talked. She'd turned. The company's legal counsel approached with a stack of papers. The board has voted, unanimously, to place you on immediate administrative leave. Effective now. You can't do this. We already have. He scanned the documents with shaking hands. Suspension, asset freeze, access revocation. His empire, gone in a stack of signatures. Rochelle set this up, he snapped. She's manipulating all of you. No, his CFO said quietly. Your ex-wife walked in and told the truth. Something you haven't done in years. When security arrived to escort him out, Marcus barely resisted. As the elevator doors closed on his last look at the executive floor, one thought finally landed with the full weight of the truth. Rochelle hadn't destroyed him. Underestimating her had. Sujin's fall came just as fast. Fired from her firm within hours of the scandal reaching her own name, you dragged your personal drama into our reputation. Her senior partner told her, flat and final. Her endorsement deals evaporated. Her calls to Marcus went unanswered until his lawyer opened the penthouse door instead. Mr. Rain is not receiving visitors. The lawyer said, robotic. I'm not a visitor, she snapped. I'm someone he is no longer associated with. Given the investigation, it's in his best interest to sever all communication. The door closed in her face. She stood there in the hallway, humiliated, discarded, just like Rochelle once was. Except Rochelle had risen. Sujin was sinking. Because when the woman at the center of the story finally tells the truth, the one who helped bury her always falls first. Rochelle walked into the Rain FinTech boardroom for the final confrontation with her chin lifted, one hand resting lightly on her belly, Ji-hoon at her side. Marcus stood apart from the other executives, pale, hollowed out, a shell of the man who once believed the room bent around him. Rochelle, he said, you shouldn't be here. No, Marcus, she said. You shouldn't have brought me into your world in the first place. The chairman gestured them forward. 12 faces watched as she took her seat. Miss Davis, we've been made aware of documents bearing your signature tied to unusual financial activity. I understand, she said. Marcus leaned forward. Sweetheart, you don't have to do this. The word hit her like a slap, the same one he'd used to talk her into signing away her own safety. Rochelle breathed in, steady now. I didn't know what I was signing. Marcus told me the business was too complicated for me to understand. That's a lie, Marcus snapped. She has proof, Ji-hoon said, voice dropping into something lethal and calm. Rochelle opened her bag and set a small flash drive on the table. Voice recordings. Conversations between Marcus and me, from when he pressured me to sign. I recorded them because something about the way he talked never sat right with me. So I kept a record, just in case. Marcus's face drained of color as his own voice filled the room. Just sign it, Rochelle. Don't ask questions. You wouldn't understand this stuff anyway. It's fine. When it ended, the silence in the room was absolute. I'm done hiding, Rochelle said softly. And I'm done letting him use me. 2 SEC officials stepped through the door moments later. Mr. Rain, we need to ask you a few questions regarding suspected financial irregularities. Marcus turned to Rochelle one last time. You didn't do this alone. He put you up to it. No, Rochelle said, steady as stone. You did this to yourself. When they finally let him out, Rochelle exhaled a breath she'd been holding for 8 months. Ji-hoon's hand found her arm, grounding her. You did well, he murmured. She didn't feel like she had. But for the first time since her life fell apart, the world wasn't looking at her with pity. It was looking at her with respect. Winter melted slowly into spring, and with it, Rochelle's world transformed in ways she once thought impossible. The SEC investigation concluded swiftly. The evidence was airtight. Marcus was formally charged with fraud and document falsification. His empire, his image, his name, all of it collapsed under the weight of choices he alone had made. But the truest reckoning didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened outside Kong Capital on a quiet spring afternoon, when Rochelle stepped outside and found Marcus waiting, not the polished founder from magazine covers, but a hollow, sleepless shell of a man. Rochelle, he said, voice cracking. To talk. Please. What do you want, Marcus? You ruined me. Everything I built, gone. Do you even care? Care, she repeated softly. Did you care when I slept on a mattress on the floor carrying your child? When you forged my signature to protect your own image? He flinched. I made mistakes. No, she said. You made choices. You chose greed over integrity. Cruelty over loyalty. I lost everything, he whispered. No, Marcus, she said, letting the words land with finality. You lost everything because you tried to take everything from me. He broke, finally. I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. She studied him, not with hatred, not with longing, with clarity. You're not apologizing to me, she said gently. You're apologizing to the man you destroyed. She turned and walked back to where Ji-hoon waited. This chapter of her life was closed. That evening, Ji-hoon walked her home as the sky faded to dusk. At her door, he hesitated. Rochelle, I want you to know something. You didn't rise because of me. You rose because you finally saw yourself the way I saw you from the beginning. Her breath caught. And when you're ready, he said, I'd like to build a life with you. Not out of strategy, not out of circumstance. Because you're someone I admire. He stopped himself. I'm asking, not deciding. Whenever you're ready. She smiled. She noticed the correction, and it meant more to her than the words before it. I'm ready, she whispered. For all of it. He hadn't told her about his mother's call yet. The ultimatum, the family name, the disapproval waiting for them across an ocean. That conversation, he knew, would come. But standing there, watching her smile for the first time without fear behind it, Ji-hoon decided the family he was building here mattered more than the one demanding he end it. Some battles, he understood now, were worth fighting in the open. 2 years later, in a quiet ceremony overlooking Manhattan's glittering skyline, Rochelle and Ji-hoon exchanged vows. Her daughter, now a giggling toddler with her mother's eyes, held her hand as she walked down the aisle. No scandals, no shadows, just a future built, finally, on her own strength. And somewhere across the ocean, a mother who had once demanded her son end this embarrassment would eventually receive a photograph. A woman in white, a child laughing, a son standing taller than she'd ever seen him. Whether she accepted it was a story for another day. For Rochelle, this had never been about revenge. It was about becoming impossible to erase. Do you think Rochelle was right to give Ji-hoon a chance after finding out he used her? If you were in her shoes, what would you have done differently? And Marcus, does he actually deserve everything that happened to him? Or did karma go too far? Let us know below. If this story moved you, don't leave without letting me know. Like it, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe. There's more where this came from.